Hey, Rogue Nation, thanks for joining us for another episode of While You Were Working. You know, it's pretty easy to just go with the flow and maintain that status quo until all of a sudden, good enough just isn't good enough. Well, today I'm joined by Dustin Poole. He is a business development and sales operations executive who's had the opportunity to lead multiple organizations in just those realms. And it's pretty exciting to have him with me because I believe that the best marketers are people who actually understand sales. And so I love having salespeople on the show where we can have an opportunity and talk with them about what's really great about that, because again, I think that makes the best marketers. I was reading some of your bio, and one of the things that really caught my attention was you had this line in there that said something about you're comfortable in being uncomfortable.
Right.
And then my favorite one was this idea about when a client's in front of him and he's trying to go through an apples to apples comparison, he wants to be the orange.
Mm-hmm.
How could I not have you on the show? I'm so glad to have you, Dustin.
Of course, thanks for having me. So yeah, the whole premise behind being comfortable in being uncomfortable, right? Is finding comfort in being uncomfortable is the fact that you essentially need to be the odd man out, right? You need to be the one that's different, a little
rogue.
Yeah, a little rogue, I would say. Yeah. So you guys are. You feel the same way we do about, or I do about sales and marketing. And I like to say apples to apples is not where I want to be. And the reason for that is because whenever you're an apple being compared to another apple, it comes down to price, right? And I don't want to be on the race to zero, right? Because if you're looking for a profitable business, that's not where you want to be.
You know, all of that truly resonates with us and anybody who's, watching this show. Those of you who are watching, I mean, that's what resonates with you as well. And, at Rogue, we are always looking to stand out and do things differently.
Sure.
We have a statement that says different is better than better. That's one of the things that we like to say around here.
Absolutely.
And, everybody wants to be better. We want to be different.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying, hey, I'd like to be different. I want to be the orange in that apples to apples comparison.
Absolutely.
So was there, maybe you can tell a time with the audience about a time when you just were like, you know what? How did that resonate in your mind? Like,
mm-hmm.
I am going to stand out. I'm going to be different.
So, I don't think there was a specific time to where I said, hey, I want to be different. Whenever I was maturing into an adult, I became obsessed with success, mm-hmm. right? So I would see these successful people, and I would try to peel back the onion to understand why are they successful. And one of the things that I did was I tried to understand where they came from, what they do, what's different about them. And I started to uncover they truly are different. They speak differently. They dress differently. So if I'm wanting to be where they are, I need to model them.
Right.
I need to be different. Mm. So that's kind of where that mentality.
So you saw the model in them that just all these people that were so successful and that really stood out because they stood out.
Exactly.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, on today's topic, what we're wanting to talk about is the road to relevancy, and that we want to stay relevant. And as we were having conversations, and again, when I first was introduced to you, and we were like, oh, this is great. I really like the way your philosophies and the way you think about stuff. It reminded me of a guest that we had last week,
mm-hmm.
or last time. And one of the things that he said that really resonated with me was this idea that marketers are not long-term greedy. We don't think about the long term enough, and that we need to be long term greedy. And you started talking about that we need to be focusing on the longer term, and that you had this idea. You spoke a lot about the long term strategy that you had for educating your market, and that you had a long term strategy of education. Why do you feel so strongly that client education is that overlooked winning strategy?
Right. So I think that. So being long-term greedy is a great concept,
cool,
right? So it's it's the idea that you're making plays today to where you don't see maybe an immediate return or immediate result, but long-term the chips will stack up, right, in your favor. So and a lot of people, a lot of salespeople now, they're so focused on the short term. What can I get from this immediately? Instant gratification, which is really crippling in some ways. But I think if you if you do the long-term play, and you position yourself to where you shift your focus to your customer or your prospect and try to provide as much value as possible, I think that ultimately you'll win whenever they need something, because they know that you have their best interest in mind.
Right. And you've laid those breadcrumbs out there.
Exactly.
When they go back, they can find things that I guess resonate with them as well. So, you're kind of talking about when the chips fall and all that kind of stuff. In sales, in particular, everything is driven by that quota. Right. You've got that milestone out there, and you've got to hit it and achieve it. And lots of times that's where this comes into real conflict, because you're doing things that are long term that you can't see immediately, but you've got to get that quota.
Right.
How much effort, how much budget, how much time should you be thinking about and spending around these longer term greedy ideas of, in this case, of educating, leaving those breadcrumbs?
So I think it depends on where you are in your business or with your business, right? So if you're a mature business, you have an engine that has brought you to this point, right? And that engine you should be able to cultivate business from and continue that on. But I do think that if you want long-term success and you're looking for the future, this business and this strategy will eventually die on the vine because your competitors are looking ahead. Right?
Yeah, they've moved beyond it.
Exactly. So I think that more important today than it was, 5 years ago. It's information is so accessible, and people are looking for information. They're looking to be educated. So if you're not there in front of them, educating them, even though they're not ready to buy yet, then you're going to be forgotten. Right. So I think it's very important to educate no matter what. Now, depending on where you are with your business, that will dictate the amount of budget, the amount of time. But for a mature business, I would say 60% plus.
Excellent. Right. And again, really just thinking about that long term, and that idea of what got you here is not going to keep you there.
Right.
And it's so easy to maintain that status quo.
Yes, it is.
I think there's a statement that says if you're uncomfortable with change, you're going to be a whole lot less comfortable with being irrelevant.
Absolutely.
And I think that's exactly what you're saying there.
Yeah.
You've had an opportunity to work at a variety of businesses, and we also, another thing that we shared in common was this idea around commoditized businesses. You've left some of those. We work with a lot. I mean, there are a lot of businesses that are, quote, commoditized.
Sure.
And one of the things that we talk a lot about here is this idea that if you believe you're a commodity, then you've already lost.
That's
and
right.
Again, that was something that really resonated with us together. What's your perspective on commoditized businesses? And then more importantly, what's the remedy for avoiding that mindset?
So a commodity in and of itself is not a bad thing, right? Trying to sell a commodity on its own will get you in trouble.
Your race to the bottom.
Exactly. So you're going to the race to the bottom. Long term, the revenue is not going to be there. So you have to know how to pivot out of that strategy. And one way to do that is make your commodity more valuable, right? And by doing that, you can charge more. You're not an apple, right? So instead of being the apple, how about you sell the apple as well as the juicer, right? So you can make juice with the apple. What about a recipe book or a cookbook to then, cook delicious recipes?
Service on the juicer.
Exactly. So there's all kinds of different things. You're buying a grill. You're not just buying the grill. You need a lot of other stuff that goes along with it.
Sure.
So how do you package that up to where it's more valuable? Gaming systems are the same way. You go out there. I would prefer to buy, a game plus the gaming system plus a controller rather than the gaming system. And I think that these marketers have figured that out.
The people who think that way have realized that's what
exactly.
That's a great thing. So so finding your we would call those as elements of value. What's your secret sauce?
Right.
That specialness, and then pulling all of that together,
right,
so that you can position yourself as more than a commodity. Excellent.
Exactly.
You have just taken on a new role
Mm-hmm.
at Plutus Health. And I'd love for you to talk to our listeners,
Sure.
let them know a little bit about that place, because I think it's a pretty exciting model that you guys are doing. And when you take on a new leadership position, obviously you're trying to come in, you're trying to make a lot of changes, you're trying to do things. That's the reason they hired you.
Right.
They want you to do some things. In your situation, you're working with an industry that maybe hasn't done a lot in, let's call it in more the digital or some of the more up and coming marketing methods. They've done
Right.
a lot of handshaking and building relationships, and that's obviously the bread and butter of that. But you're kind of starting from scratch, and I know you're finding yourself in that position. When you're in that position and you've taken on a new leadership position and you have to start from scratch,
Mm-hmm.
Do you have some tips on what are the things that you need to be looking for? What are those must-haves? What are the things that you have to do in order to start from scratch?
So I think number one, you need to understand what has brought your business to where it is today. And so you leverage those clients that your business is built on, right? And you interview them, you understand why they chose your company and why they continue to leverage your services or product or technology. Right. And so that's the essentially honeypot, right? And then once you understand why, then you can figure out how to scale that, right? And that's the reason, it's not, people think their website and collateral and a deck or whatever it may be is your answer to success.
Okay, you heard it here first. Those are not the answers.
Yeah, they're not.
The answers.
I promise. I'll explain why. So you have to understand your messaging and the foundation of your business, right? And then you can lay or bolt on that stuff onto your foundation. Even your sales operations are built upon that foundation, and that's why we chose Road, right? So you guys get that. We interviewed quite a few different marketing firms, branding firms, and what stood out with you guys is the fact that before we do anything, before we show anyone anything, you guys get to the root and figure out, if we're going to be successful long term, if we're going to try these different marketing strategies, these channels, whether it's whatever, Pinterest or whatever, we need to understand what to say to these people.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
So,
I love that, and thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
We're excited to have you guys as a new client of ours, and at the same point in time, it's also refreshing. I mean, just as much as you're looking for something, we're looking for something too.
Sure.
And so I think there's so much in this. This joint, like we're kind of believing of the same things,
right.
And that's really smart. Kind of in that vein, we talked a lot about transparency. Even
sure.
this podcast, this video podcast, you start the button,
right.
start broadcast,
yeah.
It goes, whatever's happening is happening,
yeah.
And then you hit end and it's over, and whatever happened is exactly what happened.
Right.
And it's very transparent and all those kinds of things. You've talked a lot about transparency, and we've talked about this idea that there's probably just not enough of it out there.
Right.
Why do you think transparency is so important, especially as a result this idea about it's the road to relevancy?
Mm-hmm. So transparency is kind of a cliche, right? But it's a cliche for a reason, right? People at the end of the day want to work with people that they trust and they've invited into their circle of trust, right? And they want to be able to shake your hand. And there was I'll tell you a story about transparency and kind of my experience. I had a director that she was very close to the vest with a lot of her personal life and all that, and that's fine. But there's a sense of a corporate facade that a lot of people put up, and I think it's detrimental because when someone has this wall up, if you have a wall up, whoever you're speaking to will also have a wall. And in order, again, we go back to people buy from people they trust. And if there's not a mutual trust factor there, it's probably not going to work out.
Right.
So I think transparency is huge. I think authenticity is huge. People need to know you and the real you, right?
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I think that's probably the key to being successful.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, and then being that authentic, transparent you, whatever that you as a person,
Right,
you
sure.
as a brand,
Yeah.
being that is how you stay relevant.
Absolutely.
It is how you stay on that road, and it is hard. It's hard to do because it's so much easier to put that wall up. It's so much easier to protect yourself.
Right.
Well, it's amazing how fast time goes.
Sure.
It's I guess we're probably a good 20 minutes in already.
Yeah.
I never let anybody leave without asking them this question, though,
Sure.
because the whole show that we've put this together, the whole reason that we spend any time at all is because too often we sit at our desks and we do our jobs, and we do our jobs well, and we kind of maintain that status quo, and we're moving forward and we're trying to do great, but we're so busy focusing on our jobs that we forget to look up and look out and say, gosh, there's other things that are happening here. What do you think people aren't paying attention to right now, but they should be?
Yeah. So I think that the conversation we're having with our customers is important. And you know, again, you go back to creating that circle of trust and having that handshake. It doesn't have to be a physical handshake, right? But it's still that relationship building. And I think that we, as salespeople, as marketers, that whole conversation needs to be more of a thought out. You know, it's not a website which we've relied on for 20 years or 30 years, whatever it's been.
It's the easy part.
Yeah. So it's not a website that has 100 different tabs and throwing up all of your information that you can possibly include in the website. I would rather have a nice landing page with a story relating to that specific customer, with a video maybe, or some sort of testimonial, some way to connect with people digitally. And I think that people are starting to get that it needs to be not confusing, essentially, right? So you have a page that has 2 links on it, 3 links, and it's just creating a personal relationship digitally, really. I think that's something that I've come to realize over the last 6 months to a year.
It's a lot of hard work. We got to dig a little deeper to find that connection.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dustin, I don't always get to shake the hands of the people who are on here. I actually appreciate that too.
Yeah.
I'm glad you were here. And for those of you who are watching, I'm going to have a link up in just a little while with a link to this episode, of course, and also some additional resources. There'll be some blogs that Dustin's written, a connection to him on LinkedIn, and all those good things. And again, maybe a link to Plutus as well, so that you can. I know we have a lot of individuals out here who are physicians and own medical practices. So if that's something that's of interest to you, I'll make sure that all that information is available. All right. Until next time, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on While You're Working. Bye.